Hello! Welcome to the Dwarven Tavern. I am your host, Lyric, and today we are doing another review. I know, it's been so long since we've done videos that it's been driving me crazy. But as you know from, if you follow us on Facebook, we've been having a lot of technical difficulties, on my end especially, which are now resolved, which is why I'm doing videos. So, I plan to crank out a few reviews, and I'm going to start with the Gods and Goddesses book. This is a really good book. It is Gods and Goddesses, a 5th edition supplement by Jetpack 7. It goes for $29.99, worth every cent. And I'm saying this because I've looked through this book. I wanted to, I kind of spoiled it for myself. Normally we do our reviews kind of as first look so that we can give you our initial reactions and why we think the ways we do. But I wanted to go ahead and dive into this because I am a huge mythology buff. So I wanted to kind of glance through it to begin with, just to make sure that it was what I thought it was. So, without further ado, let's dive into it. On the back of the book, it says, Gods and Goddesses featured classic deities for use as a 5th edition OGL supplement. Inside, you will find cleric and paladin player character options to bring in rich levels of diversity to a new or current 5e game. Inside, 16 rich histories provided for each god and goddess, which may be used to enhance any 5th edition game experience. Stats and abilities for each god and goddess avatar, if you ever wanted to insert a powerful avatar into your 5th edition campaign. Now you can! Full page color artwork for each god and goddess, which is phenomenal, is beautiful. Have your clerics and paladins inspired by knowing what their deities look like with vivid color. 16 new divine domains for clerics, 16 new sacred oaths for paladins, new spells, new magic items, new creatures, new NPCs, and more. So, getting into it, first off, look at that amazing artwork. Hopefully the glare isn't too much, but beautiful. Getting right into it, I'll say, this is not what I thought it was. And what I thought it was is that they were new gods and goddesses altogether. I thought they were creations of the editor and the author. I thought they were, it's dedicated to all the gamers who love to be with friends, roll dice, and adventure. This book is for you! So it's for me, is what it is. But yeah, I thought this was a book about, I thought it was a content, I thought that the content of this book was all created by the people who made it. It is not. Instead, this book is a very thoroughly researched list of all of the gods and goddesses that may and do exist in our world. For example, just listening off of the contents, the first 3 or 4 gods are Anansi, Baba Yaga, Batarakala, I'm totally butchering that one, Freya, Fuji, Hecate, etc., etc. These are actual gods and goddesses in Earth, like in actual mythology that you can draw from off of the interwebs. They have just taken these gods and goddesses and outlined them in a way for you to use them in your own your own campaign, which is great. I mean, it's not what I expected. I'm a little disappointed in that, but, you know, if you just read the back of the book, like I didn't, then you would already know that. Also, look at all of these backers. Incredible amounts. Thank you for that, because this book is amazing. So, it starts off with the introduction. This is kind of just, you know, how to use the book and going on with, you know, what you can do to use these as, and, you know, which gods are, and so on and so forth. But let me read the first paragraph, and maybe that'll explain a little bit better. Mankind is hardwired for faith. Before the invention of pottery and agriculture, humans had already invented gods of some 25,000 years before. That is a lot. Sorry, creationists. The first deities were aspects of nature, animal spirits, tree spirits, the sea and the sky, and so on. All of nature was to be revered, which is kind of how I feel. I'm an environmentalist. Stories were handed down word of mouth, and nature started to take on an anthropomorphic form. Well, that word was hard for me. A spider spirit morphed into a human god with spidery legs. The trees and lakes became a goddess who could transform from human into water or water nymph. The original stories were lost to time, but as mankind developed writing languages, the gods took the forms we now understand, which is very true. This is just fact. For centuries, cultures collided, borrowed from one another's stories, so that gods like Ishtar, Isis, Mithra, and Aphrodite all start to look alike, which is also very true. North Africa, Middle East, Mediterranean, and India all flourished with the tales of 1,000 gods and goddesses. As people migrated and the cultures became in contact with one another, Europe and Asia added their tales and growing tapestry of world's religions. So, this is an explanation of why you can use these things. And then the next part is how to use this book. Options for the game master are a wonderful thing. This book can assist bringing in new elements to your current campaign setting, as an existing setting, or creating an entirely new world based around these gods and goddesses. That alone is enough to explain how to use this book. You just take whichever god or goddess that you want to from this magnificent, colorful, beautiful book, and you can insert them as the focal point of your cleric's life. Like, you can put, like, let's just Fuji. We'll just say Fuji, who is a Japanese goddess or Chinese goddess. I am not sure. I should know that, being a Japanese, I guess, specialist. I'm not really. I don't know. I know a lot about Japan because I got a degree in it. So I should know about that, but I don't. So, like, if you want to worship Fuji, then you can make your entire paladin's life goal to be about worshiping Fuji and how to go about doing your best in her name. So that's what this book is all about. So just diving into it, let's go with Anansi first, because alphabetically he is first. He is a spider god, Kamsa. He looks like this. Hopefully that glare is not too much. It's beautiful. He is the trickster spirit of knowledge and stories. His symbol is the spider and the spider web. His home plane is the deep jungle realm, and his alignment is chaotic neutral, which I have found most of these gods to be chaotic neutral, because, or just neutral in general, because they're like, meh, we're gods. We're above human morals. So, he is the trickster and keeper of all knowledge and stories. He takes the form of the spider and spins giant webs of the forest. There he catches all the stories from the people's dreams and gossip. I believe Anansi is African. When I was a young girl, I had a bunch of African stories that I don't know where I got them from, but I had a few booklets of, like, Anansi, and there was a story about, well, they were Native American stories too, because there was one story about how this person became a pine needle, and then the woman who drank the pine needle got pregnant, and it was a reincarnation thing. So, like, I know of all of these, like, mythology points, but, like, this elaborates on it in a much more creative way. And it also helps you kind of delve into the culture that our own Earth has. So I feel like not only is this giving you the option to expand on your gameplay, it also expands on your own culture, and I think that is absolutely beautiful. It shows you a way to embrace someone else's culture without appropriating it, basically, is what I'm trying to say. Like, you can use Anansi as one of your gods without it being offensive, I guess is the word I'm looking for. So, anyway, moving on. He acts as a go-between for humans and other gods, and is responsible for tricking the divine into creating night and rain, among other things. However, his aims are never noble. Anansi entertains himself by tricking humans and the gods through complicated pranks. So he's kind of like Loki in the Norse mythology, but as a spider. So, his dogma is he only cares for himself. He expects nothing less from his subjects. However, there is a deeper lesson in Anansi work that he expects his followers to understand. His lessons are a form of tough love, stemming from the cultural climate of those who follow him. Life is unforgiving, and those who do not learn from their failings will surely die. Anansi is there to teach people these lessons without causing anyone harm. You just said that if you don't learn, you die, and yet Anansi. And if that leads to people being filled with fear of the gods, so be it. Better than being dead. I can see it. I don't think I have any characters that would worship Anansi, but I feel like I need to create one now. So, the clergy and temples. Anansi has no temples. Those who serve him do so to travel the world in search of knowledge, secrets, and stories. They have, hello, Tavern Cat. What are you doing? She's here to help out. So, as I was saying, they have no other higher calling, are not concerned with saving innocent lives unless it fits their purposes, and do not make oaths except to their god and knowledge. Whatever the lesson... Do you mind? That's my coffee. Do you want to know about Anansi too? No? Okay. Do not make oaths except blah, blah, blah. Whatever their lesson, the clergy and paladins of Anansi will always recite a parable where the humanity or the gods were tricked by Anansi's cunning. So, all of the gods, can you, lay down or something, please? So, all of the gods, as I was saying before I was interrupted, that are in this book have pretty much the same layout on their stats and the information about these gods. For example, they all start out with the dogma, clergy and temples, worshippers, and then it goes to, if you flip to the next page, it goes to their stats, the domains and the oaths, the actions that they can take, so on and so forth. So these are all the first half of their definition in the book is explaining what the god is, and then the second half of the book is explaining what the god can do, especially for your campaign. So, for example, Anansi has an armor class of 26, natural armor and divine, which is not actually that high, so he must not actually wear, he must not wear any more additional armor. So, his hit points are 740, which is 30d20 plus 200, and then his speed is 60 feet because he has a spider body. His strength is 26, his dex is 30 because he has a spider body. Con is 20, int is 26, wisdom 24, charisma 25 because he is a god and he's a beautiful man. Saving throw skill, so on and so forth. Let's take one of his feats. Let's do cunning action just because that's super Anansi. Anansi can take a bonus action on each of his turns. The action can be used to dash, disengage, or hide, because he is a spider. Magical weapons. All of Anansi's attacks are considered magical because he is a god. He's a very magical god on top of that. Like, he isn't just like a divine being. He is one who uses magic. So, and then the actions consist of multi-attack and short sword because he has one. He has 4 melee attacks per round because he is a spider. He has a lot of legs that he can attack with. Short sword, which is a melee attack. And then he has legendary actions, which he can take 4 legendary actions, choosing from the options below. So, he has a lot of those, considering disappear, sneak attack, reflex, spider charm, teleportation, premonition, and spell immunity. So he can do that 4 actions. Ow, do you mind? 1 legendary action can be used at a time and only at the end of another creature's turn. Anansi this is reminding me of Pokemon for some reason. Anansi regains spent legendary actions at the start of his turn. So, OP, but that's what gods are. Moving on is the domain of the devious spider. Clerics of Anansi are called spiders, and they certainly are devious. Those who take up the mantle of Anansi are con artists or clever tricksters eager to sharpen their skills in deception. Whatever the reason or method, a spider is a force to be reckoned with. I feel like clerics of Anansi would almost be considered rogues, but they would still be considered clerics because they're using a divine intervention to make their spells work. So, like the champion of Anansi featured later, they wear a few items of clothing or armor which may signify their devotion of Anansi, aka spider or spiderweb, so on and so forth. However, their alignments are good or chaotic neutral, which still doesn't make sense to me, I feel, because to be chaotic, to be good, this alignment video has already been done before. It's already in our list of videos that we've done, but I want to recap. I feel as though alignment is not so much good and evil as it is selflessness and selfishness. Anansi seems to have a lot of selfishness in his character and those who follow him. So I feel as though being chaotic good doesn't necessarily revolve around that chaotic selfishness. So to be good is to be selfless. It's you throw yourself under the bus for the good of others. To be chaotic evil is not necessarily wishing malice on the world as it is wishing the others in the world bow to your own whim. So I feel as though chaotic good doesn't necessarily go along with Anansi. And don't worry, I'm not going to do this with every single god. But I feel like the alignments for the gods may be a little up for debate. I don't know if they would necessarily be what is described in the book, because there's a lot of wiggle room for me, especially with a spider, that you can use for your campaigns. So, that being said, that's the only beef I've had so far, is that the alignments don't necessarily match what the description of the god is. So, he's not an evil god, but he's very neutral and very self-concerned. Not self-absorbed so much, but he's he's self-absorbed. It says in the book that he is only concerned with himself, so that's self-absorbed. So, I don't think that's necessarily evil, but at the same time, it's not necessarily good. That being said, we'll move on to the Oath of the Stolen Knowledge. So, that is the Paladins of Anansi. A Paladin of Anansi is somewhat of a contradiction. See, this is what I'm saying. On one hand, he serves his god with a fervent devotion of other paladins. On the other, he is a charlatan, a cheat, and a devious liar. Devious liar. His quest is knowledge at all costs, but never to go so far as murdering innocents for the cause. The more taboo or obscure the information, the more a warrior wants it and hunts it with zeal. So I guess this comes into the point where what I was making earlier, is that Anansi may be chaotic neutral, but his followers may be a little more of the ambiguous alignment. So they might necessarily be good, while as they, because every follower that has a god or goddess, every worshipper that has a god or goddess, they may not necessarily agree with one or a few aspects of the god that they follow. Which is why you follow the goddess, to learn from them. So following Anansi may be... Let's take this as an example. You have an orphan in an orphanage who is walked all over and he's taken for granted, and boom, I have a cat. So this kind of goes along with what I was saying, is that the followers of Anansi and the followers of a lot of gods follow their gods to learn the ways of their gods. And that includes how to love oneself using the god's mentality. So those... Using the example I was building, you're an orphan in an orphanage who gets walked all over, taken advantage of, used all the time, abused maybe, and you find the god of Anansi, and you realize that self-worth is more about taking care of yourself, to the point of not obsession, but putting yourself first is always more important in that religion. So this orphan takes on the mantle of Anansi to learn how to self-love and to learn how to self-accept and be more important than what they may have thought. And in doing so, they have to travel the world to find the knowledge of doing so. So that's a good... I can see that as being chaotic good, is that that character is trying to learn how to be more self-respecting and self-loving. So the next part is the alignments of, well, I was talking about the alignments, and that was only clerics. So the alignments of the paladins are lawful neutral and chaotic neutral. Those are make a little more sense because you're still in the gray zone of what is appropriate. So that orphan metaphor, you can use that as a cleric because that doesn't really go along with what I was saying. As for the paladin, they are not necessarily self-righteous as they are self-righteous for the cause of Anansi. So they're not self-righteous for the sake of themselves. They're self-righteous for the sake of a god they follow. Which is most paladins, now that I think about it. Anyway, the tenets that they have are they seek knowledge, always have the upper hand, be plain. They don't need to be flashy. Appear bland or boring whenever possible. For when you appear this way, people will get bored of you and are less likely to expect a trick. Oh-ho! Oh-ho! I see what you did there! Because I was thinking that if you wanted to be flashy, that would be more appropriate. But I got it now. Be complimentary to others when it suits you. Never underestimate the power of a well-placed compliment or favor. Oaths, channel divinity. I'm fucking struggling with these words. Battle sage, cunning strike, so on and so forth. So those are all aspects of Anansi that you can use. The other gods that they have and goddesses are Baba Yaga, Batara Kala, which is Indian, which is probably why I'm messing up the word so bad, is because I know nothing of that language. So I apologize in advance if I have misplaced or mispronounced any of these gods. I'm trying my best. Which, lyrics #1 rule, always have a pronunciation guide. Please. Because when you have idiots like me, you can butcher everything. So that's just how the world works. And a pronunciation guide would be much appreciated. Which, I mean, these are gods in the real world, so you could probably find all the pronunciation online. But for the sake of convenience, please put it in the books. So, moving on. Freya, one of my favorite goddesses of Norse mythology. She is the goddess of love and war, and she rides on a chariot with cats. That is my goddess. So, then there's Fuji, which all of these gods have, like I said before, they all have the layout, which look at that artwork, so beautiful. They all have the layout. If I can words, that would be great. They all have the layout on one page, which describes what they are. And then they have the next spread, which is all about their D&D stats and how you can play them in D&D. Hecate, who is drawn as the triple goddess from pagan mythology. Which is not necessarily wrong, but it's still kind of weird to me, because she's not really. So, Ishtar is a perfect foil to Hecate. Ishtar is also in here. It's actually Easter, but I'm pronouncing it Ishtar because I'm dumb. While Hecate is no doubt stronger, Easter's power, I'm going to try, it's going to kill me. Easter's power extends to nearly as many disciplines and realms, where Hecate has power and should be doing work. Easter they're doing work. So Hecate is the lazy magical sister, and Easter is the naive, actually doing work sister. I don't think they're actually sisters, but that's how you can look at them. So, moving on. Inti Easter, she is shown here, being as beautiful and valiant as you would imagine. She is, Easter is complex and full of contradictions. She is among the oldest goddesses, if not the first. So she is the elder sister. Easter has a ward with the serpent of the void, Kur, since the beginning of time. She is both good and evil, kind and vengeful. Easter is both a warrior goddess and the goddess of love. She's kind of like Freya. Which, as in the beginning of the book, it says that a lot of religions in our world were meshed together, and this is a good example of, that happening. Easter is quite possibly the most powerful goddess in existence, capable of creating and unmaking life in a blink. Easter is the goddess of fertility, love, marriage, power, desire, and war, all mankind's most basic instincts. Easter is angry, vengeful goddess who rules over the more dangerous aspects of love, making her very different from Freya. So she's like primal instinct love, or aggressive love-making, or the love-hate relationships, or obsession. Those dirtier aspects of love, she is in control of. So, and yes, Easter is the goddess that Easter was named after. If you want to look into the etymology of that. That's why it sounds so similar, because it is the same thing. Then Mazu, who is, I think, my favorite in this book, mostly because of her followers. It looks very Japanese, but it's Chinese, because I know how to pronounce Chinese names at the very least. For example, her followers, and boom, I have a cat. So, in the back of the book, it actually shows all of the NPCs and the spells and the, see, he's helping me find the pages. All the spells and the NPCs and the creatures and the whatnot that you find in the back. Do you mind? Can you lay down? Thank you. So, for example, just using Mazu's, I guess, companions that she has is, I'm going to completely butcher their names, just so you know. Their companions, if I can find them, are, here they are, Qin Lian and Shen Feng So, these are the Oni that were, or I should say demons that were converted to serve Mazu loyally. Qian Lian has sharp vision, which is used to keep watch over sailors at night and other inclement weather such as fog and storms. He can use this vision to pierce the facade of any mortal and see creatures' true intentions. Well, Shen Feng is also a consort of Mazu. He's rarely seen without his companion, with Qin Lian. Shen Feng keeps keen hearing unusually to help sailors distinguish between favorable and unfavorable winds. He can also use this hearing to sense for miles around him, blah, blah, blah. So, not only can you use these gods and goddesses, you can use their companions as well, which is really, really cool. So, there is that. And on top of everything that they have in their stats that you can find after flipping past their magnificent artwork, which I still love very much, you can go past all of the other gods and goddesses and go to the appendix of the book, which holds their creatures, their magical items, the spells that they have, and lastly, at the very end of the book, they have NPCs, and these are characters that you can use as either NPCs to your game or prefabricated characters that you can use in a game just for worshiping these specific gods and goddesses. There are a few extra points in here, such as Powers of Tengri, Divine Scion of Mazu, and then the Gifts of Valor, which, excuse me, if you follow, particular gods and goddesses, they may gift you with abilities. For example, Gift of Animal Companionship, you may cast Animal Friendship without your expending a spell slot or using components. Additionally, you gain plus 10, I reiterate, to spell saving DC when charming an animal. You may use this gift once between short rests. So that gift can be given to you as a kind of divine power that, one god or goddess may, find you favorably in need of. So, that is pretty much the book. I don't want to get too much into the little details of it, just because I want you to look into it yourself. So, that being said, there's a lot of things that you can still explore, such as Excalibur, which is Vivian's, or Osho Shango, which is Shango's, the cats, which are Freya's, so on and so forth. Like, every single aspect of this book has a lot of detail and a lot of information that you can absorb And I feel like you should be able to absorb at your own rate, so I don't want to get too much into those for overloading or overwhelming you. That being said, I have a few complaints with this book, and that is 16 is a good number to start with. That's a bonus. I feel like that's enough gods and enough regions to start you off with a specific story. However, we don't know what those specific regions are. We don't know, unless you look it online, we don't have exactly where these gods or goddesses are located. If you don't know anything about mythology, you're completely lost on if these are real gods or real goddesses. So I feel like if the author wanted to be absolutely crystal clear on which gods and goddesses were being used, there should have been something in each one of the gods or goddesses' description where these come from. Even a separate chapter altogether explaining maybe a short blurb about the mythology behind each one of these gods. It may be in there, but just glancing through and, you know, reading the beginnings of the pages of each of the gods, I couldn't really find any specific outline saying this god is from England, or this god is from Norse mythology, or this god is from Africa. So, I feel like that was really important and really strange to overlook. There may be, Vivian is very obviously the Lady of the Lake. It says it in her title, and that's very obviously the United Kingdom somewhere. So, but the problem is a lot of people don't know exactly where that is. So, including myself, my ignorance is showing, which is fine. That's my point, is that I am ignorant to where some of these gods come from, and I feel like that was a very important point to look over. That being said, it's not a gigantic problem, but it is enough to bug me. Another problem is the pronunciation. That is very important when it comes to worshiping something. I feel like the pronunciation guide can normally be overlooked. It's whatever. I have a big problem with it. But, you know, I feel like when it comes to worshiping and spells and whatnot, I feel that pronunciation is extremely important, because you don't want to mispronounce the name of someone that you're following. Otherwise, you're going to be like, that's very insulting. I hate it when people mispronounce my name. And you would be surprised at how many people mispronounce my name. If you were a follower of me and you pronounced my name Lyrice instead of Lyric, I probably wouldn't give you any divine intervention. However, I feel like that's not enough to give it a full axe of detraction. So, that being said, I give this book a 4.5 out of 5 axes. It is a very good book. It's a good start. For its first edition, that half an axe is hardly anything to lose. So I feel like, you know, the little details that could be fixed, they're not that big. It's just that they all added up. So, with that said, I feel like this book is good. You should check it out. All of the information that is in the book is useful. The information that's missing, you could easily look up online, which, you know, that you should be, well, why did you subtract a point for that? Well, all the information that you should need from a book should be in the book. So that goes for pronunciation, origin, etymology, so on and so forth. I feel like while this is a good start, it could definitely be expanded upon. If there was a second Gods and Goddesses book with even more gods and goddesses, totally I would buy that. I would look into that. I would review that. So if you're thinking about it, send it my way, and I will, you know, review that one as well. So, but at the same time, keep this review in mind. Include their origins and include their pronunciation, because I would greatly appreciate that. As someone who strives for perfect pronunciation, perfect grammar, what have you, it really bugs me when I can't do it justice or honor that it needs. So, 4.5 axes out of 5 axes from the Dwarven Tavern. Check this book out. Highly recommend it. You can find it on their website at jetpack7.com or godsandgoddesses5e.com. Either one, you can find this miraculous book, and you can buy it for $29.99. So, I am Lyric with the Dwarven Tavern, wishing for you to want from nothing but adventure, and at first I feared it, then I charged. We will have more reviews coming out to you very shortly. So until then, we will see you next time.